Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa Green, a technology accessibility training specialist with the Center for Instructional Technologies Technology Accessibility Team. Our team works to ensure that all technology users, including those with disabilities, have a functional and accessible technology experience with the university's websites and the technologies we use for teaching, learning, and conducting the business of the university. You can find more information about our efforts on our website at accessibility.ua.edu. Today's session covers how to use Adobe Acrobat Pro DC to correct basic tagging issues in a PDF. After setting up Adobe Acrobat Pro DC for accessibility work, we'll look at how to address reading order, lists, artifacts, tables, and figures. When we offer this session in the classroom, it's as a hands-on workshop. On the screen and in the chat is a link you can use to access the exercise files we use for that in case you'd like to try to follow along with the webinar recording later. A quick moment for housekeeping. This slide includes a picture of me. I have my webcam turned off, but I thought you might like to see who you're speaking with today. To improve audio quality, I've muted everyone by default, but when you want to talk, just select the microphone icon in the Zoom control bars and feel free to mute or unmute yourself. You can also choose to have your camera on or off. Please do mute your microphone when you're not speaking. When I'm talking or sharing my screen, please write in the chat box and let me know if you can't see or hear something. And you're welcome to use that chat box throughout. I may not be watching closely while I'm talking, but I'll do my best to check in every once in a while. If I don't see your question or comment immediately, don't worry, I will come back to it at the end. This session is being recorded. I'll make available that recording as well as resources shared during the session and the exercise files. With that, we'll get started. Before we get into any specifics, I'd like to show you what I do to set up my Acrobat Pro for accessibility work. And I suggest you do the same, at least while you're learning. I'm opening up one of the exercise files. This is the PDF file titled Example 1, Incorrect Heading Hierarchy. So the first thing that I encourage you to do if you're going to be doing accessibility work in PDFs is to enable the view of a couple different navigation panes. And we'll do that by going to View in the toolbar at the top of the screen, so selecting View, Show Hide, Navigation Panes. The two navigation panes we're going to enable the view of are Order and Tags. So we'll do that now. So we've selected View, Show Hide, Navigation Panes. I'll first select Order. And a shortcut to that view is enabled in the left sidebar. We'll repeat the process to add that for tags. So View, Show Hide, Navigation Panes, Tags. And now we can easily access the Tags pane or panel from the left sidebar as well. Next, we'll add shortcuts to the two primary tools Adobe Acrobat Pro DC offers to assist content authors in creating accessible PDFs. The Accessibility Toolset, which provides access to the accessibility checker, and the Make Accessible action. To do that, we'll open the Tools tab by selecting Tools in the ribbon at the top of the page. So I'm selecting that now, Tools. And then we'll search for and add the tools that we have in mind. So the first one is the Accessibility Toolset. So I'm typing Accessibility. And to add that shortcut, I'll select Add. And now in the right sidebar, there's a shortcut directly to the Accessibility Toolset. The other one we're going to add is Action Wizard in order to easily access the Make Accessible action. So I'm typing Action Wizard and adding the Action Wizard. Note that you can rearrange the order in which these tools appear. So if you're doing a lot of accessibility work, you might choose to have those near the top. You can also remove the ones that are there by default. Okay, so now we've got Acrobat Pro set up in a good configuration for accessibility work. So there are some overarching things that you need to know when you're working on PDFs and remediating them for accessibility. And this slide comes from Adobe, specifically Adobe's Rob Haverty, who works with accessibility with Adobe's cloud products. First, content should be tagged in the logical reading order. I'm going to switch back to that exercise file so we can take a look at that. So I'm back in the exercise file titled Example 1, Incorrect Heading Hierarchy. I'm opening up the tag panel for this particular document by selecting tags in the left sidebar. That's actually already done because that's the last one we added, but if you needed to do that, you would select the tags icon or the tags item. Although there's a bit more to it than this, when people talk about accessible PDF files, they're usually referring to PDF files that have searchable, selectable text. So a file where I can do, as I'm doing with my mouse now, select the text and copy and paste it, or a file that I can search within and get a match because it includes actual digital text rather than an image of text. So I'm just going to type the word structure because I know it's in the document. And there are several instances where that word appears. So, oh, actually I was searching within tools. That's why it was not cooperating. All right. So, although there's more to it than that, the basic characteristics of a PDF, an accessible PDF, are that it has tags and actual text rather than an image of text. Tags are the basis of an accessible PDF file. They indicate the structure of the document, communicate the order in which items should be read, reading order, and determine exactly which items will be read. When remediating PDFs for accessibility, you'll need to make sure that the reading order displayed in the tags panel coincides with the logical reading order of the document. And we'll return to this in a moment. So other common areas for review when working with PDFs are tables, figures, artifacts, and lists. There are additional unique considerations that depend on the nature of the source document and how it was converted to PDF. We go over many of these in our advanced workshops on scanned documents, tables, lists, and forms. So I'm returning to my exercise file, the one titled Exercise 1, Incorrect Heading Hierarchy. I've got the tags panel open in the left sidebar. We're going to start our work with this document by checking one of those common areas for review, the logical reading order. We'll start by selecting the topmost tag in the list of tags, which is also known as the tag tree. So I'm selecting the topmost tag, the section tag, by putting it in focus with my mouse. When I select the very top level tag, you'll notice that I get fuchsia boxes around all of the items in the document that are tagged under that topmost tag. So really all of the items in the document. If I have items that don't have those boxes, it means they're not tagged. If I arrow down the tag tree, which I'm going to do now using the down arrows on my keyboard, you'll notice that the corresponding content in the document is highlighted. So I'm going to do that now. Down arrow, down arrow, down arrow, down arrow. So I'm doing that. A tag is in focus in the tag tree and the corresponding content is in focus in a fuchsia box within the document. So a paragraph is in focus right now. Level 3 heading, tagged content is in focus right now. Content tagged as a paragraph is in focus right now, and so on. So we have H tags for various levels of headings, and P tags for paragraphs. So we can use the up and down arrow keys on the keyboard to navigate the list of tags and see the corresponding content in the document highlighted. And what we're looking for is whether the tags appear in a logical order, one that makes sense. Usually that order should match the visual order of the document's contents, or the order in which a visual user would read the document's contents. If the order is incorrect, we can correct it by dragging and dropping the tags into the correct position in the tag tree, or right-clicking or control-clicking on a Mac on those tags to cut and paste them into the correct position in the tag tree. So let's pretend that this content is tagged correctly. It's actually not, but let's pretend that it's tagged correctly, but the reading order is just incorrect. If we wanted to adjust that, let's say we wanted this content currently tagged as H4 to be read after this content currently tagged as paragraph. We can do that by dragging and dropping to move the tag into the correct position in the reading order. Or we can right-click on the tag, cut it, and paste it into the correct position in the reading order. So two different ways to accomplish the same thing. If you have content that's already tagged, but it's just not in the correct reading order, you can resolve that by clicking and dragging, or cutting and pasting into the correct position. So many of the tags that we're working here in this particular document are headings, or H tags. Headings are a very important part of logical reading order. Headings communicate the organization of the content in the document, and assistive technologies can use them to provide in-page navigation. Headings should be nested by their rank or level. So the most important heading in the document should have the rank 1, or H1. And the least important heading in the document should have the rank 6, or H6, if it gets to that level. Sometimes maybe you only have 2 levels of headings. So H1 would be the most important, H2 would be the next most important, and so on. The thing to keep in mind here is that skipping heading ranks can be confusing and should be avoided where possible. So for example, you want to make sure if you use an H2 that it's not followed directly by an H4 in the hierarchy, that their headings are being used in order: H1, H2, H3, H4. So in the tag tree of this particular document, we can see that the headings in this document are not nested correctly. We have an H4, and then the next heading in the document is an H5, then the next heading in the document is an H3, and so on. Ideally, we would fix this in the source document. So I'm going to open the Word document from which this PDF was created. And I say ideally we would fix this in the source document because it's much easier to correct most PDF accessibility issues in the original source file than it is to correct them in Adobe. Correcting them in the source file also means that you correct them once rather than each time you make an update and save the resulting PDF. So this is the source document for the PDF we've been looking at. It is titled Example 1, Incorrect Heading Hierarchy. It's a Word document that's in the exercise files. So this document includes the headings. As I select each heading, I want you to pay attention to what's happening in the Home tab and the Styles group. As I select each heading, the corresponding style that's been selected for that text will be in focus. So this first heading has been styled as a heading 4. This next heading has been styled as a heading 5. The next heading has been styled as a heading 3. Ideally, we would fix this here. So I've said that the first heading, the most important heading in the document, is usually heading 1. The way we would fix that is just bring that text into focus and change the heading level to heading 1. Because we don't skip heading levels, the next heading level in the document would be heading 2. If those are sort of equivalent in the hierarchy, the next heading of the document could also be a 2 if uh, the next heading is supposed to sort of fall under the one that precedes it in the hierarchy, then it would be a heading 3. So relatively easy to fix in Word, fix it once there. But let's say you can't fix it in the source document. Maybe you don't have access to the source document, or for whatever reason you need to do the fixing in Acrobat. I'm going to switch back to that PDF document now. To correct headings in the Acrobat tag panel, you can double-click on the incorrect heading and type to replace it with the correct one. So for example, this first heading, instead of being an H4, we want to make it an H1. So to change that, we can double-click on it in order to be able to edit it, and change that 4 to a 1. And that is now styled as an H1. The other way that you can change an existing tag is to right-click on it, go to Properties, and in the Tag Type drop-down, select the appropriate choice. I actually usually use this method, the right-clicking on the tag, choosing Properties. That way I don't have to remember sort of the correct syntax for headings. I can just select them from the options here. So I'm going to make that change and say close. And we could continue throughout the document to make those changes. So H1 is the first heading. We don't skip heading levels. So hierarchically, this next heading should be heading level 2. So I'm going to Properties and changing it to heading level 2. Heading level 3 would be the next one potentially, depending on how the document is structured. We don't want to have another 1 after a 3. Documents usually only have 1 first level headings, so this would probably be more appropriately tagged as heading level 2 or 3, kind of depending on the contents of the document and what makes sense. So I'm not going to change all of them. You can actually see a fully accessible version of this document in the exercise files in the folder labeled Solutions. But I just wanted to show you how you can change heading levels within Acrobat itself when you don't have access to the source file, and how that same process can be used to make changes to other tag types. So I am switching over to another exercise file. This one is exercise 2, Word demo doc with errors. I am actually going to, I don't have the shortcuts I added because this one was closed, or was open when I added those, so I'm going to close it and reopen it. Word demo doc with errors is what we want to look at. Yeah, and now we have the shortcuts that I added since opening that file. So I'm going to open up the tags pane or panel or tree by selecting the tags icon in the left sidebar. And I'm going to select this very top level tag for section. Using the down arrow key, I'm going to navigate down through the document to the list of Canadian provinces by population. So down, 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 down. So this is a list of Canadian provinces by population. This list is not tagged correctly. The person who created the source document didn't use list styles. So in Microsoft Word, where this was created, they did not select the bulleted list or the numbered list when creating the document. Instead, they used indenting to create the visual appearance of a list. When a screen reader gets to this content as written, it will read it, but it will not read it as a list. And the user will miss out on important structural information. So we're going to fix that. The first thing we need to do is add a list tag to indicate that there's a list. When you add a tag to the tag tree, it always adds below the tag that has focus. We want to add this new list tag below the H3 tag, which precedes the list, and that is what's in focus. So after clicking on the tag that we want to add the new tag after, we can right-click and choose New Tag, which I'm doing now. We'll then need to select the type of tag, which in this case is List. So I've selected List from the Type drop-down menu, and I'm selecting OK. So in the tag tree, we can now see that following the H3 tag, we have a list tag. Now we need to do two things to add the items to the list. We need to tag them as list items, and we need to move them so that they are child tags of the list tag. So the items in the list, the Canadian provinces are already tagged. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of those. They're already tagged as P tags or paragraph tags. So we're going to change those in bulk to a list item tag. So I'm selecting the first one. I'm holding down the Shift key and selecting the last one. So that way, all of my paragraph tags that I want to change to list tags are selected. I'm now right-clicking, choosing Properties, and in the Type drop-down menu of the Tag tab, I'm selecting List Item. Now I'm selecting Close. So rather than just a paragraph tag, these items now have the correct list item tag. The other thing we need to do is associate the list item tags with the list tags. They need to be children of the list tag. Right now they're peers, they're on an equivalent level, but we need to nest them underneath the list tag. They're currently all selected because I selected them all to change them. So with them all selected, I can drag and drop them under the list tag, or I can cut and paste them into the list tag. I prefer to cut and paste because it gives me more control, so I'm going to do that. So with them all selected, I'm going to right-click, choose Cut. I'm going to select the list tag as the destination tag, right-click on it, and choose Paste Child. So that will paste the list item tags as child tags. So now all of the list item tags are nested appropriately under the list tag. When I collapse the list tag, the list item tags collapse as well. So we've now appropriately tagged this list so that not only will it be read, the user has that important structural information that will allow them to know that it's a list and how many items are in the list. All right, I am going to use the down arrow key to move really to the next item in the document. Now we're at artifacts. An artifact is essentially something you don't want read out loud or don't want read by an assistive technology user and doesn't have any real value other than maybe decorative or formatting. When you turn something into an artifact, depending on how you do it, it will remove it from the tag tree automatically. I'm going to show you the way that removes it from the tag tree. So as we continue down through the document, I'm going to actually scroll up the document a little bit to make it more visible. So I'm going to continue navigating down through the tag tree to show you what I'm talking about when I'm talking about content we want to hide or not have read. So down arrow, we have a paragraph of text that's tagged as a paragraph. Down arrow, a blank space tagged as a paragraph. Down arrow text, down arrow blank space, down arrow text, down arrow blank space. So we have P tags for paragraph, then a P tag for blank line, then another P tag for paragraph, and so on. These blank lines are not the end of the world, but they're annoying because the screen reader is going to read them as blank. It will read the information and say blank, and then read the information and say blank. This can be especially aggravating when document authors use blank lines and carriage returns to push something down or onto another page. And you have 20 of these blank tags And when you're reading it with a screen reader, you hear blank, 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 and so on. So to avoid this, you want to use appropriate paragraph styling in the source document. So rather than using the Enter key to add space around paragraphs, you do that with the formatting options in the source document. That's the best way to do it. Again, you fix it one time rather than every time that you make a change and create the PDF. But if you can't correct the source document, you can artifact these in the PDF. So to artifact tagged content, you want to select the tag that you want to artifact. Then right-click and select Reading Order to open the Reading Order tool. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to select the first of these empty P tags I want to artifact. I'm going to right-click on it and choose Reading Order to open the Reading Order tool. So I'm going to move the Reading Order tool just to make the content a little easier to see. And this is the paragraph tag in question. I'm going to click on it. And in that Reading Order tool, I'm going to select Background Artifact. So it's currently tagged as a P, has a P tag in the tag tree. I'm selecting Background Artifact, and that removes the tag from both the Reading Order view and the tag tree. And we can do this for the other P tags as well, so the empty P tags. So I'm selecting one of the empty P tags, choosing Background Artifact, selecting another empty P tag, choosing Background Artifact, another empty P tag, choosing Background Artifact. And that's just a lot tidier. It's much more friendly for the screen reader user who doesn't have to wonder how long the document is, if they're missing important information, or just be annoyed by all of those blanks. We're going to take a look at tables now. So I'm going to close the reading order page or reading order view and switch back to my tags panel. On the second page of this document, which I'm scrolling to now, there's a simple table that provides information about vehicles sold by model and color. This table is comprised of 4 rows and 4 columns. The first cell in each column serves as a header, labeling the columns as color, SUVs, sedans, and trucks. The first cell in each row also serves as a header, labeling the rows as ruby red, midnight black, and triple yellow. When you're working with tables, you need to access the table editor. I'm going to do that by selecting the tag for this table in the tag tree. I'm scrolling down in the tag tree, clicking on a table tag, and the corresponding table in the document is highlighted in fuchsia, so I know it's the right one. In order to open up that table editor, I would right-click on the table tab and choose Table Editor. And the visual appearance of the table in the document now changes. We've got some color shading, and we've got some information indicating the type of cells that are in the table. That option to show the type of cells in the table, we want to make sure that's on, or it's on in mine. You can make sure it's on in your instance of Acrobat by right-clicking on the table and selecting Table Editor Options. So if we want those cell types to show, whether something is tagged as a table header or table data, TH or TD, we need to check the show cell type option in the table editor options. So that's checked. Note that you can also change the colors to something that works best for you, color scheme wise, for visibility and so on. So I'm going to say okay. Back over to our table. So this table has got a lot going on for it. These cells, color, SUVs, sedans, trucks, are correctly labeled as headers in the PDF because they were correctly labeled as headers in the source document. However, some important information is missing. So I'm going to right-click on the color cell and choose Table Cell Properties. This cell is correctly labeled as a header cell. So under Type, Header Cell is selected. However, there's no information telling us what type of header cell. So in the Scope dropdown, we want to specify that now, that this is a column header cell. That the word colors heads a column listing colors. So I'm going to indicate that this is a column header by selecting Scope Column and say OK. You can actually bulk edit these, so I'm going to do that now for the other column headers. So I'm going to select the cells that share the same properties. So SUVs, sedans, trucks. I'm right-clicking, choosing Table Cell Properties, and setting the scope of those cells to column, and then saying OK. So now not only have the cells been correctly tagged as table headers, they have been identified as column headings. Now let's look at a table that's a little bit more complex. In the tag panel, I'm selecting the next table tag, which is associated with a more complex table that includes information about sales results for 2015. I'm going to right-click on this table, or right-click on its associated tag and open up the table editor. So there's two primary issues with this table: merged header cells and nested header cells. The merged header cells appear in the top row: first quarter 2015, second quarter 2015, third quarter 2015, and so on. So these cells were created by merging cells in the source document. The nested header cells are those for the months. So January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, and so on. So we need to indicate that both types of cells serve as headers. That first quarter 2015 is a header, but so is January, so is February, so is March. And that January, February, March kind of fall under the first quarter of 2015. So we're going to start by identifying the months as headers. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select all of the months, because I can do this in bulk. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So all of those have been selected. I'm going to right-click and choose Table Cell Properties. And we want to change Data Cell to Header Cell, with the scope being a column. And I'll say OK. So now these cells are correctly identified as table headers. Now let's address the merged header cells that are above the month cells. I'm going to select the first quarter cell and then right-click on it and choose Table Cell Properties. We want to set the scope as column header. And then we're going to change an attribute that we haven't worked with yet, and that's the span of the column. So this table header cell, first quarter 2015, spans 3 columns. It spans January, February, and March. So we're going to set the column span to 3 and say OK. We do want to proceed. I'm going to go ahead and quickly do that with the others. So second quarter 2015, third quarter 2015, fourth quarter 2015, right-click, Table Cell Properties. These are column headers with a span of 3. So now our table has correctly been tagged as a table. The headers are correctly identified as headers, and we've resolved sort of the issues of differentiating the top level quarter headers with the nested month headers. And that's all I'm going to do with this particular table. You can see this table fully correctly tagged in its entirety in the solutions files. Now let's talk a bit about images. I'm scrolling down in the document to this first photo of a sunset. And I'm going to select its corresponding tag, its figure tag in the tag tree. So I'm selecting the first figure tag in the tag tree. The first image of a sunset is highlighted in fuchsia in the document. One of the fundamental principles of digital accessibility is providing alternative text for images. Text alternatives describe the information or function represented by the image. And this ensures that images can be used by people with various disabilities. Alternative text is also useful in scenarios in which images don't load and plays a role in search engine optimization. So for all of those reasons, alternative text, very important wherever we're creating digital content, whether it's in a document or on the web. I'm going to show you a couple different ways to check for and edit the alternative text for images in a PDF. So one way is to right-click on the figure tag itself, choose Properties, and in the Tag tab, there is an alternate text field. So right now, the alternate text reads Sunset 10. That's probably the name of the image file. This isn't particularly descriptive, so we want to change that to something more suitable. I'm going to say sunset with cloud. Sunset with cloud. And after making that change, choose close. So we could continue to do that figure by figure. You know, I'm going to go to the next one in the document, right click, choose properties. In the tag panel, in the tag tab of the object properties box in our alternate text field, again, we have something there, we have something that's present, but it's not meaningful. It's the file name or the location of the file. So we would change this to something more meaningful. It looks like maybe sunset viewed through a water droplet. This is where it's really handy for the actual document creator, the subject matter expert, to be involved in writing the alternative text. So we would overwrite this with something that better describes the content and function of the image. So I'm gonna go ahead and close that for now. That's one way to do it, so figure by figure. There is also the possibility of sort of reviewing and editing the alt text for all of the images in the document sequentially. So you can access that in the accessibility toolset, which I'm going to do now. So in the right sidebar, I'm selecting accessibility. And there's an option titled Set Alternate Text. So I'm going to select that. And we get the notification that Acrobat will detect all figures in this document and display the associated alternate text. So I'm going to say OK to that. And Acrobat's just going to identify each figure tag and prompt us to write an alternative or alternate text associated with it, or indicate that it's a decorative figure. So it's kind of hard to see, but Acrobat has identified 8 images. The first one is in focus. It looks like a picture of a dog. So kind of depending on what the purpose of this image is, what the text around it says, you know, might be something like border collie in a classroom. I'm just guessing at this. So we'll select next to go to the next image, which actually already has alt text, so that looks good. Next to go to the next image, sunset with cloud. I did that one and it looked good. Next, to go to the next image. This is the one, I wanted to provide better alt text for, so I would do that. Next, would need to edit that. Next, would need to edit that. Next, would need to edit that. Next, we need to edit that. So 2 ways to do it, one by one, or by using the set alternate text option in the accessibility toolset. Sometimes you will have things tagged as figures in your document that are purely decorative. They don't really contain any information. That's going to be something like a line or maybe a box for shading. Sometimes just little funky things that get carried over when we create a PDF. They get tagged as figures. So if that's the case and you want that figure to essentially be ignored by assistive technology, you would then mark it as decorative figure by checking this box. I mentioned line as an example of one of them. Another one that I see a lot is like a stylized page number that has like a little symbol next to the page number that appears on every single page. That symbol, is just decorative. It doesn't really provide any information. I'd mark that as decorative as well. So at this point, we've looked at reading order and common tag fixes for tables, figures, artifacts, and lists. One thing we haven't looked at is how to manually add tags. So I'm going to close out our set alternate text dialog so we can do that. So I am going to scroll back up to the tag tree in this example 2 Word document and delete the first few tags. So I'm deleting the H1 tag, deleting paragraph, deleting the H2 tag. Let's pretend these tags were missing from the start, that they weren't created when the PDF was made, or Acrobat missed them when the auto tagging process was completed. If specific content in your document is missing tags, you can manually tag it from the tag tree by following these steps. So what you want to do is first select the object tool in the tag panel, and then select new tag. You select the type of tag that you want to add from the type list. So the first tag I'm going to add is going to be an H1, heading 1. So I'll select that now, and then say OK. So the new tag H1 has been added. Note that it was added under the paragraph tag. The new tag is always going to be added under the tag you have in focus when you add it. So I would need to move that up move that to where it needs to appear in the hierarchy. So we have the H1 tag. Now we just need to associate it with the appropriate content. So I'm going to highlight in the document what needs to be tagged as H1. Right-click on the new tag in the tag tree structure and select Create Tag from a selection. So it's going to create the H1 tag from the selected text. So now the text I selected, Accessible PDF Demo Document, has been tagged as a first level heading, or H1. We'd repeat that process for the other content here. So the next kind of tag I want to add is another paragraph tag. So I could go to New Tag, choose the type as paragraph, say OK. That blank paragraph tag has been added following the H1. That's actually where we want it, so we don't need to move anything around. I'll select the corresponding content in the document, right-click on the paragraph tag, and choose Create Tag from Selection. Now the associated content in the document has been tagged as a paragraph. We'll do that with the one other tag that I deleted. That's a list tag. So we're going to add new tag. It's not a list tag, sorry, it should be heading level. It has the word list, which kind of threw me off a little. We're going to tag that as heading level 2. and say OK. And it is in the right spot in the document. We're going to select the text that needs to be tagged as H2, right click on the H2 tag we added, and choose Create Tag from Selection. So now, where this content was not tagged before, it would have been basically invisible to an assistive technology user. It is tagged as H1, paragraph, and H2. That's manually adding tags. That can be very tedious. Sort of depending on the document I'm working with, whether it already has tags or not, whether I have access to the source file, any number of things. Rather than manually adding tags, I will often utilize auto tag document. So doing this is going to overwrite any tags that are currently in the document, but if you are starting with a document that doesn't have any tags, or the tags are kind of a mess, or you're finding that you're having to add many tags manually, there's also the option to auto detect tags and add those to the document. So ideally, you've created your PDF in such a way that it has tags, but if not, there's the auto tag option to add them. And then using sort of the remediation skills that we've learned today, clean them up a little bit, remove extra ones, reorder them, change the types, or manually add them if need be. That's all I have for us today. I am going to stop here so that we'll have time to do questions or comments. I hope you have found this useful and that you won't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions as you start to put what you've learned into practice. I'm going to stop the recording now so that we can discuss a bit.